We live, we live, we live. You know, first off, I want to give a good shout out to all the people that's getting ready for the 2024 spring and summer growth season. I've been getting my little seeds and trying to figure out, what I'm gonna grow for this year. Hopefully, I can get this corn started this year and get this corn growing. I gotta properly, do a little more research on it because I had to start growing. Got it to about a yard, about 3 feet, and then it just caved in. I'm not getting no more producing, none from it. So I got to go back to the drawing board, doing more research on it, figure out what am I doing wrong to yield my crop. But getting into it, this is need versus want. What's going on, cool gamer? This is needs versus wants, where you get to a point where a lot of people, have issue with their wants, comparing them to what they need. Um, I really don't want to, shoot people in the foot or go after genders, but this is worth talking about for a reason. Um, there was a young lady, she was planning on getting married, and to an issue at hand, her boyfriend, they were saving to buy a house. And when it came down to it, you know, it was a issue to the point where they were saving for the house and the engagement at the same time. Hey, what's going on? Official Jake Mia in the house. And the crazy part was while they were saving to buy the house, she really wanted to go to some Beyonce concert to the point where she actually thought the concert with Beyonce was a little bit more worth her relationship with her man that she's probably been with for a couple of years because they were engaged, they were saving to buy a house, and these were the things that she wanted in the relationship that he provided, in the text, because there was an issue to where she was asking him that getting married will make her feel happy. So he obliged, and their next step was getting a home so they can find or have a place of their own versus renting, I assume, or staying with family members. That was never really talked about. Sweet talk, what's going on? And the crazy part was when they got down to it, um, you know, there was an issue over the tickets, which they had the money. Collectively, both of them had the money, but individually, he had the money. So it was assuming that he made more money than her. He was, a little more financially stable because when they were talking about the breakdown, they had about 9,000, let's say in some change, probably like 9,500. And out of that 9,500, she was expressing to him she only needed 1,500 of that money to get the nosebleed tickets. Sorry for y'all, I ain't watching your comments. I'm actually driving now. But pretty much with the nosebleed tickets for the Beyonce concert was about $1,500. And she expressed to him that out of that 9,500, some of that money was hers. And the crazy part about it was out of that money, she only had about $800. So in return, this guy pretty much put up about 8,700 out of that money. So he put up 8,700. She only put up $800. And she was expressing to him, well, I'm entitled to my money. And he was like, well, it's about priority. We have to make sacrifices. I don't think this concert is worth the sacrifice. She wanted to go so bad that she broke off her engagement, got her $800, and said, "Have a nice day." And you know, like I said, it's not really about gender because it that was just the wildest story I ever heard on both sides. I done heard some men do some wild stuff, like go to the strip club, ball out, and then report their card as fraud, and they done spent almost $6,000 at the strip club or was in Vegas, you know, just wilding out in Vegas, and just said somebody stole their car. I done heard them crazy stories all day, but this hit the side from emotion to just insane all in one rip. I've never heard no story literally get to that extreme. But nevertheless, like I said, that goes into a need versus want. You know, some would say to a degree that she needed to be married, and that's why that process worked. I mean, that kind of falls upon the want, but in some cases, you look at it as a need to have a provider. You know, um, the Beyonce tickets. You know, you need to be with your friends, I assume. And, I guess it was girl power or whatever, but technically speaking, that was a want. She wanted to go to the concert. If she didn't go to the concert, it wasn't gonna affect her life as she think it would have, far as, not being able to talk with her friends about what happened, little stuff like that about the concert. But other than that, like considering that relationship went down the hill just because of a concert, and that's when you start looking at, putting things in perspective. What is priority? And just using that story as a reference to both genders, that a lot of men and women don't put things in priority. Like for some situations, I've known people that live in apartments and would go and buy a Mercedes, go buy a BMW. You're staying in an apartment. You don't have a house. A condo townhome will be a little more, up. But you're staying in apartments in a rough part of the neighborhood. You don't consider yourself owning a nice house before you own this luxury car. So that takes, points as well. Putting priorities in together. You know, um, prime example, getting a nice, watch or something. Or, in most cases, as far as with women, wanting a what is it called? Birkin bag or whatever those Gucci bags, stuff like that. But you have to pay your rent, you know. But the bag is on sale. Even though the bag is on sale and you need to get it because this sale won't last or something or markdown, it's still considered a want. You know, you can say need and you have to get it all day, but compared to where you putting things in priority, you know, this bag is only gonna look good on my arm, and I seen this joke on Instagram where what's going on, Queena? I seen this joke on Instagram where it was funny. This lady posted, she said, all the women that buy nice bags, a man never said, man, did you see the girl at the Louis Vuitton bag? Her bag is banging. You know, they actually look at the woman and then they go from there. Same thing with men. A woman will look at a man's shoes and how he dressed because it suits him, even preferably to his car. But in the end, all that goes out the window when you're dealing with somebody who's what, narcissistic, abusive. It's nice car, nice clothes. None of that means anything. So that's when you start putting your priorities in perspective. Like, you know, there are several men that I've heard, throughout YouTube and Instagram, social media, just in general, date women just to drive their cars. And I was like, wow, you know, and that's the thing. Like these guys want to drive a nice car, so they'll deal with ladies who have nice cars. And that was the funniest thing about that I heard. What's going on, young Riz? And the craziest part about that, looking at driving a nice car, compared to having a long term relationship. Like I said, it goes back into priority. Putting things in perspective. Do I really need a woman with a nice car so I can look good riding around in it, or do I actually need a woman that we can build something with? Which one is better for me? Which one long term is giving me, the most bang or the better bang for my buck in most cases? So that's when you start dealing with, you know, like I said, going back to needs versus wants. And a lot of people, just getting their priorities in perspective. You know, do I actually need, you know, uh, $1 million home versus providing my family just, somewhere good to stay at, you know, and it gets into play. What's going on, Wellness with Frugal Mama? I actually mixed it live this morning. I'm gonna go back and look at it. But having situations to where a lot of us don't really plan for things, you know, not really, putting things in perspective to where we can get the best outcome. You know, even with working at your job. That's why always talk about budgeting. Budgeting 101, writing things down, figuring out what needs to be paid, what week, because you got to understand, on average, most people don't make enough money to pay all their bills with one paycheck. You got some people, they make literally enough money to pay, I would say, assuming of 5 households, at least 1,500 per household. You know, you got some jobs that work off commission. You know, preferably housing, um, corporate in that field. You know, shout out to Alonzo. Alonzo is one of the ones that you know work that way as well. His saying is he um he eat what he kills, and if you know what that means, he have to go out there and hunt to make the sales. He's in sales. He sells life insurance, and you know he could have a good month and make $100,000, and then the next 2 months he probably only make 500. It all depends, and that's the biggest thing with getting into sales and knowing your market, and also assuming with dealing with people that pretty much have your best interests at heart, just like you have theirs at heart. So getting into those situations, you have your need versus your wants, and what do you feel comfortable with. You know, most people feel comfortable with a 9 to 5. Most people, want to be an entrepreneur, to be their own boss. You set your own schedule, but you also set your wins and your losses, and that goes into your need versus wants. You know, while everybody else is at work grinding out, you could be at home chilling, watching TV, come in, do about 5 hours of work, and then you're done for the day. You know, but when you have to meet a deadline, you're going to be the one actually working, hard, getting stuff done compared to other people. They're clocking in at 9 to 5 and then they're done. Like I said, once again, it goes back into your need versus wants. Not just with the things you actually need in life, but situations. Like I say, having a job. That's the situation. Do I really need to work for somebody? Do I want to work for somebody? Do I have the option? And the same rule applies with being a entrepreneur. Can I be an entrepreneur? Is it the thing that I want to do or that I need to do? You have to look at those options as well, because when it comes down to it, most of us have a lot of issue with, you know, taking leadership from people. You sit there and say, well, I don't want to talk to such and such at work. Prime example with me, I always tell people a lot of times my own boss. Um, I pretty much drive trucks, so when I'm on the road, I don't technically have to deal with people unless they call me. And when it gets to a point, I really don't even have to answer the phone because it gets to a point where I can just chill out. Hey, I was in a bad zone. My phone didn't work. I can't talk. And assumingly, hey, they just have to believe it. In most cases, that's what a lot of things people go through at their jobs, not wanting to deal with people versus, needing to put up with things just to keep safety at their job, because assuming that, you know, getting down to it, we all need money at our job, because, hey, say the least, there's some men and some women don't have to work, you know, that's something that they do just, hey, to pay extra bills because, their significant other might make enough money to not do it. I mean, prime example, I have a friend that anything dealing with his kids, his wife, he always give her permission to quit the same day. He said, "You don't technically need this job. You know, I prefer you to have a job. It's more or less something that I want you to do, but it's not something that is needed. So at any given time, his wife feel uncomfortable and call him, he'll say, quit. Well, I don't like how they treat me here. Quit. You know, if it comes to a point where she says that the situation is giving overbearing, um, they want to put me in a compromising position, he'll tell her quit. You know, and that's the thing with communication. You having a husband that you can deal with. And like I said, in some cases, men are the same way. They call their wives. Their wife might be the breadwinner, and she put him in a situation that, honey, you don't have to deal with that. Prime example. I talked to a gentleman. His wife, just say the least, she has a job in the medical field where you know she makes about $300,000 a year. Tamika, what's going on? Yeah. Pretty much so. This lady, she makes about $300,000 a year, and her husband, he worked for a company, didn't really like it too much, and was always coming home just stressed out, complaining about how management was doing certain things and was doing things wrong. And his wife was like, "Why don't you just quit?" He's like, "Quit." So what I'm gonna do? She was like, well, do what you want to do. You've always thought about, starting your own company. And she put him in position to win. She bought him, the equipment, things he needed to do to start his own company. And that was the key. Like I said, it goes on both ends. Sometimes it might be the man that's influencing the relationship to focus, on something that someone wants compared to, you needing to start a company and ultimately failing because in that situation, people who need things and they really, really, really think they need them, it's just a want, and they're suppressing it to try to say, well, this is something that I will feel comfortable with, you know, your basic necessities going into what you need, housing, food, transportation at this time, you know, and logically some form of making money to provide. And say the least, we get into these situations, and a lot of people want to go above and beyond. Well, I know I need these things, but I really want the 5, 10 bedroom house. I really want the Lamborghini or the Mercedes or the Bugatti I seen Mayweather have. I want a chef with the finest of food, caviars and stuff like that. And I want to be an entrepreneur working for myself. Make That's a step up from your needs. All these wants are mainly a step up from your needs, you know. And a lot of people go through that when they have an issue, you know. For the most part, they're looking at situations. Yeah, sorry about that. Family call, little emergency. I I needed to answer that. But nevertheless, like I said, generally going into your needs versus your wants. Ultimately, that's how you learn more to spend your money for things that actually, provide you a better outcome. Because in most cases, you sit there, you buy the most fancy and nice of things. All that comes with a cost. You know, Prime example, you buy, someone buys a Lamborghini. It's a nice car, but then you're paying more on the insurance. Um, One of the YouTubers I follow, he has a Lamborghini where he pays about $1,500 a month, almost, and that's at a good rate compared to nowadays. Um, and I think he bought that car back in the day. Now you probably can't get a Lamborghini for nothing less than probably $2,000. The insurance was running him about I think $700 to $800 everything. So he was all in at $2,300 a month. Nevertheless, he don't drive it as much. He has a regular car. He pretty much keeps it in the garage. He drives it every now and then, you know. And that's the thing. When you get into those type of cars, you get into a complex of not driving them as much. And then what was the purpose of getting it? you know. So like I said, it goes back into your need versus your want. If you have a luxury car that you have to keep in the garage and don't drive it as much, you know, is it something that you really needed or that you really wanted? Same rule applies to people who have big houses. I remember dealing with people and they were talking about, having these big houses and having to downsize. One lady, she bought the big house, 5 bedrooms and everything, furnished every bedroom, but it was only her, you know. She got this house assuming that her family would come visit, and I was like, 5 bedrooms. I see three, but she bought a 5 bedroom house with a huge basement, probably had a couple of rooms down there as well, and nobody really came and seen her. So she had this big house. It was nice, but to what degree? You know, and even the situation I was talking about earlier with the guy I knew, the one that his wife was in the medical field. She actually, before she met him, her actually before she met him, she had a house. Pretty chocolate girl was going on. She had a house, and her house technically was a 8 bedroom house, full basement, and I believe she had 4 cars. But she was previously married, so all that came from the previous marriage. But and pretty much for the most part, it was all that what she had. Didn't have any kids really, so it was mainly focused on them and the process of them just living life. But more or less, she had those things and she can afford them. You know, she moved herself up. She said she started from an apartment to a nice house, and She entertains a lot, so that's why she bought a big house. Bronze, what's going on? Flat Power God, what's going on with you? And that's the whole biggest thing when it comes to a lot of people, just having situations. Now, she didn't really need that big of a house and all those cars, but you know, it was a point that she wanted it and could afford it. And that's one of the biggest things where a lot of people, get everything misconstrued too as well. Your need versus your want. If you're having to a situation to where you can afford your wants, then it's more profitable for you to, get things squared away before you focus on those big purchases. You know, um, the lady had a nice car. I'm not gonna. Well, you don't really know her, but she had a Wraith. Nino, what's going on with you, man? New Year to you. I haven't seen you moving around in a minute, but she had a Wraith, and that's like a $500,000 car, and she had that Wraith, you know, just because that was something that she always wanted. She wanted a nice car, and when those cars first came out, that was her goal to get that car. That was a want that she wanted for herself, and she could afford it. And that's the thing with most people. When you have in these situations, you sit there, you might have something that you want, and you can't afford it. You can't keep it up. The maintenance, the maintenance on those cars alone are crazy. In most cases, I've said this on previous videos that having a Mercedes or those luxury cars, you do an oil change once a year, anywhere from $200, $300. Most people don't want to pay that just for one oil change. But if you fraction out that you're getting your oil change every 3 months at probably $50 a pop, and pretty much saying it's 4 quarters in a year, you're spending $200 on that oil change, if not more. If you go to most other places, Jiffy Lube and all that, they're charging $80 an oil change, and depending on the type of oil you use. So more or less, you know, she pretty much, can support all her wants. You know, with the 6 bedroom house, big basement, 4 cars, and she had all this before she met her husband. You know, because like I said, her lifestyle, pretty much with her job and the business and things that she have, she's up table she's able to obtain these things. And that begins, going into certain situations, like I said, your needs versus your wants, and pretty much having a situation to where you can afford your wants and not having to struggle, because that's when you have to divide your needs versus your wants. A lot of people don't understand the point of you dividing need versus wants, because generally you actually need these things to live life and to stay focused, and to also being able to maintain a budget to something that you can afford. you know and that's one of the most biggest things that a lot of people lose track on. And shout out to uh Nino, narrative and dialogues. When are you gonna make your next documentary? I can't wait to see it. But focusing back on your need versus your wants, a lot of time we focus so much just on the wants, and we can't afford them. So that's where the separation comes in. You know, living above your means, buying things you can't afford, and ultimately regretting them later on. You know, and we have these situations. Yeah, hey, we have these situations to where we're dumping so much money into things like, prime example. Take me for an example as well. Um, I technically right now have a '98 Dodge Ram pickup truck, and this is my only pickup truck as of right now. I had two pickup trucks prior to this, where I had three trucks at one time. and my wife was pushing me so bad to get rid of one of them, and then I ultimately had a wreck with the newer truck I had, newer Dodge Ram. It was like a 2010. I'm not buying no newer car like that, but that was a 2010. I didn't I didn't technically need three pickup trucks. I wanted them, so that's why I ended up got all of them. They all were paid for. I could afford them, but technically speaking, I didn't need them, so that's why I got rid of one. The other one I had an accident, so now I'm down to one. You know, and it's a '98 Dodge Ram. Now, do I want to get a newer truck? To style and profile? Yes, but this truck provides me transportation, any jobs that I want to do. So technically, the thing that I really really want, I already have. So this is my need right here is just to have a basic transportation, deal with my jobs, getting me back and forth to work, what I have to do, at work and on the side of any little side job that I'm doing. So, when it comes down to it, hey, I fulfill my need. I don't technically need to buy another car, but I want to. That's going into that mindset. Those are the things that, hey, I really want is to have a new car with all the bells and whistles. But do I technically need it? Do I technically need it? Blue Lotus, what's going on? Do I technically need it? Same rule applies for my wife. Before I bought my last pickup truck, I came in the dealership with cash to buy my wife an SUV. She was gun ho after buying a Mercedes SUV. She really, really, really wanted those Mercedes SUVs. We were talking, and the biggest thing, you know, was her trying to focus in on getting that Mercedes. And like I told her, I said that is a want. You technically just need a car. I mean, if you want an SUV, that's something that you actually need, transporting the kids and stuff like that. A little bigger, a little safe. SUVs are a lot more safer than cars, trucks as well. I've always told my wife when it comes down to it, you have SUVs and trucks more or less are used by the government, used by polices to a certain extent, you know, pretty much good. So going into that situation, we're talking back and forth. And like I always tell her, hey, get something that's, suitable for our pockets because, you know, my wife is looking at it a want that she actually is trying to turn into a need. And that's the thing that most people do. They try to turn their wants into a need by trying to find every single reason, without a shadow of a doubt, under court's law and order, that I need this thing. And ultimately, you know, it came down to the decision. I was like, you keep wanting this SUV, especially a Mercedes. I didn't mind getting an SUV, but just a Mercedes, like I always told her. And it's the maintenance on the car. I can afford the car all day to buy it. I can afford to, you know, deal with it, but I don't want to spend this high maintenance. You're talking about a upcharge of probably anywhere from 30 to 60%, depending on where you go. So why get that vehicle and pay that upcharge when I can get a Toyota, a Honda, you know, or their big brother Lexus and Acura? That's all the Toyotas and Hondas are. It's just, difference in the name. But, going into it that pretty much it'll be comfortable for our pockets, you know, for us to get a Toyota, Honda, pay the minimum on getting a bumper replaced, getting the brakes fixed, compared to having a Mercedes getting the brakes fixed. You're looking at the brake job alone, all four wheels, I think about $2,000. Going in, getting the brake job done on a Toyota, some, you're looking at no more than about $500, maybe six for all four wheels. But all four wheels on a Mercedes, looking at close to $200. You know, Jay Stocks done slid in here. What's going on with you? And like I said, it's a lot of maintenance. That's the biggest thing where, in my opinion, say the least, other people don't have that opinion. But in my opinion, getting that car is just more on the maintenance. And like I told my wife, I'm just not willing to pay that extra money unnecessary, and it's more of a want to have this car than a need. You know, if I was in a position to where you know I had to promote my business or promote myself, then that'll be a great car to have because you know people tend to look at people what they actually have and what they bring to the table. So that's the main focus on when you get those type of cars. Yeah, and the insurance as well. That's the main focus when you get those type of cars. What are they representing to most people? And they're representing a lifestyle, um, an influence of luxury. And, basically, my wife, she's not in that position. She works from home. She's not in influencing her coworkers or showing off or something unless she's doing it for social media. And nevertheless, I'm not living my life for social media. Like I say, I drive a 98 Miss Frugal. I drive a 98 Dodge Ram pickup truck. That that's not the brightest of, wonderful cars to brag about. But hey, this this big red, this big red, this my truck. More or less, you know, like I say, going into these need versus wants, even with situations with you having a job, you have to, put things in perspective. You know, you might want to go for a higher position, but to a degree, you might need to stay where you're at and build yourself. Then that puts yourself in a position to actually get into a situation to where when you need to move up in the company, you're available and you're ready. That's what most people have issue with. You know, versus them trying to get themselves established, get their stuff, actually, pretty much taken care of in the company. They want to sit there and, ultimately, move up in the company without the knowledge. Most people aren't supervisor and manager material, but at the same time, they're focusing on, hey, the more money. What is it? Biggie Small said it best: more money, more problems. A lot of times you get in a situation you can't get yourself out of, because going into that position to where you're getting more money, there's more responsibility. I've talked to people worked at companies that gave them, you know, more responsibility with less pay, you know, and that's the thing. If you're accepting that responsibility to try to get more money without having anything signed, documented, you know, you're just wanting so much, but technically it comes back into your needs to where you're not getting your needs fulfilled, you know. So in most cases, like I say, you just gotta rationalize, understand, what you're dealing with, how you're dealing with it, and going forth from there. Hey, that's right. Uh, my truck is used, multi. Um, Prime example, I was a young guy and I didn't understand it till I got like in my mid 20s. But when I was young, I always wanted the old school cars. I always wanted these old nice cars that can do things for me. And an old man told me, you need a truck. And I was like, not really. I said, I might want one later on for this and that. He's like, no, you need a truck. As a man, you need a truck because when you get a truck, you'll always make money. So from that standpoint, me being a man having a truck, He was saying if you're good with your hands, you like moving around and stuff like that, you'll always make money. In most cases, we have, situations to where a lot of people might want a vehicle for one thing, but they're gonna need a vehicle for another thing. Prime example, one of my friends, he always called everybody to move things for him. And I told him, I said, why don't your next car just get you a truck? He didn't get the truck. He steady calling people, giving them a little extra money here and there. That could be going towards your truck. That could be going towards your truck. You know. And like I say the least, what Sweet Thumb was talking about, moving things around, actually doing things for people. Hey, goes into that. You know, even what Miss Frugal was saying, a lot of times you will have situations to where a lot of wealthy people, they don't wear these fancy clothes. Like, they don't want to have the Gucci this and the Gucci that. In most cases, only time that they buy these, real nice clothes as a need, because of the fabric and the material doesn't break down as much. I was talking to someone has a clothing company. They were breaking down that the t-shirts that they were buying to sell all the way down to about 70 to 80 washes before the t-shirt starts to fade. They were breaking down like different situations to where, when it comes down to it, the fabric on these clothes are known to wear over time. The garment has to be about, what is it, 400, um it's not GSI. It's like the garment scale, so you can tell the weight of the garment and the material. I know Nino would know this because he's into fashion, you know. And so when it comes down to it, that's the whole point where you're needing that extra scale up for your company is to knowing what do you have, and what are you actually selling to people to get the best results. You know, same provided, I know a guy I used to work with. His family owned I actually worked at a family owned company, and it was a moving company. The owner of the company was bragging about how his whole outfit cost him less than $60. I think the most expensive thing was, I believe, the shoes that he had were like $23. He had a $23 pair of shoes, his shirt, his pants. I think, fraction up, 10 here, 15 here, whatever. But in total it came up to $23. And his wife got it from the Goodwill. Now, he's one of the brothers of the family that, you know, they're making millions of dollars. And when I say millions, millions of dollars. And the prime thing that he put his money in is his home, his location, where he stayed, and that was it. He's real frugal, doesn't spend a lot. He spent money on his kids to do like competition things. But other than that, they had basic clothes. They didn't really go after the high price Jordans. They would buy them, but they would buy them when they're on sale. You know, his kids would get new shoes, new clothes, everything, but they'll buy them while they're on sale. With him, he more or less would get the stuff from the Goodwill. And I was like, dude, you make this much money. What's going on, Jay? See you sneak up in here. But you're making this much money. TWT in the house. Shout out to the boxing community. When you're making this much money, and I'm like, man, why are you buying all these cheap clothes? And I didn't get it with me being young, but it was more or less that a lot of older men, I kind of noticed, they would still look good. They would buy nice clothes, but they were more or less put their kids in position to look a certain type of way, dress a certain type of way, let them, style themselves because they didn't get that much style when they were young. you know. So when they got up, that was always most kids, you know, unless you pretty much just had it like that when you were young. The first, you know, you always got your needs when you were young. You never got, for the most part, all of what you wanted. Because if that was the case, every kid would have every pair of Jordans, every pair of shoes they want, every Gucci, whatever that everybody else had, because we're influenced by what everything, you know, we see. And social media has made it even more worse to where our wants are turned into our needs. You know, I gotta have the new Jordans because everybody's gonna have them. They're gonna get sold out. That's why Jordan only limits his shoes now to a certain amount per size, because once they sell out, that's it. You know, you got to go to StockX or one of these other sites and get the markup for those shoes when they're coming out at 250. The markup on them is 450. The markup on them is $1,000, and you know don't have any shoes that the original box, original shoes. You're talking about $5,000 and $9,000. Um, there was a pastor, I think his name was Pastor Gray out of Texas. He bought $9,000 Red October Yeezy shoes. Those were Kanye West's first Yeezys that he ever came out with Nike. He bought those shoes for $9,000. He could afford them. He turned, like I said, he turned his want into a need. Now there was no way, you know, in my opinion, I mean, just coming from me being a pastor, you know, if I have a congregation that's kind of struggling and I'm spending $9,000, you know, that kind of shows my humanity towards the people I deal with. No, that's just me saying that, but more or less going into a situation, how many people can, you know, necessarily say that, hey, a lot of the things that I buy now is the things that I need. It's going into the things that I generally want. So they're converting into my needs. And like I said earlier, you have people that can, you know, convert their wants into needs because they can afford it. But the ones who can't afford it, it's still a want, you know. And social media is putting more people in that situation to where they're looking at their wants and trying to convert them into their needs. Because I mean, they're technically not doing it. You know, you can't afford it. You know, there are people who are getting evicted so much, like literally so much. I think within 2 months there were 80,000 evictions across the state of Georgia. And I was like, it can't be right. I'm like, the evictions were in the process. People are already getting evicted. I was like, it can't be right. That's why storage units are popping up. If people ever notice nowadays, you're having more storage units pop up more than anything. And a lot of times, a lot of that stuff in there they don't technically need. You know, I think the movie was Heat. You know, walk away from anything with 60 seconds or less. You know, when you feel the heat, you got to get out of there. In most cases, that's the thing with a lot of people. You know, they're holding on to this nice bed, sell it. They're holding on to this sofa, this furniture, all this stuff, sell it. You're putting it in storage. You're paying storage, which you already don't have the money that you couldn't even pay rent. And now you're putting the stuff in the storage, you know. And to be honest, there's some good landlords that actually work with people. You know, there was a landlord I seen on this one show that the landlord paid for the storage unit for their tenant, paid for the transportation with a truck as long as they didn't tear up the unit. Because the guy was having an issue to where when he was evicting people because they wasn't paying their rent, they were tearing up the house. One person put concrete in the drain, and it got to be real crazy. I'm talking about real crazy. Sorry about that. She was getting into something. But yeah, like I said, and see work was going on with you. But it gets to a point, like I said, more or less, I'm about to get ready to jump off of here. A lot of needs versus wants, you know, you need a vehicle. You don't need a Bugatti. You just need a car. Your preference on what type of car you get is on you. But, you know, like I said, don't make your wants your needs. More or less, there's so many people that are doing that and it's, hurting their pocket. I can't tell you how many people have cars they can't afford. Like literally the car is breaking down. I know a guy now, he has a nice Dodge, uh, one of those like Scat Pack type, RT Scat Pack, whatever edition Hellcat for the Dodge. He can't keep up with the maintenance on the car. So he's constantly having issues. What's going on, brother love? Constantly having issues because he can't keep up with the maintenance. You know, getting the oil change done, getting the tune up. Those high performance cars, you got to do a scheduled tune up on those cars. Um, my vehicle, my wife, her Toyota, I did the tune up. I had to do a tune up on her car. The Dodge that we had before prior to it, I did the tune up myself. My pickup trucks, I do tune ups on my own pickup truck. All it is just pulling the spark plug out, changing the wires, you know, doing some filters. If I need to replace the filters for the fuel, you already replace your oil filter when you replace your oil, you know, air filters, making sure your air filters are replaced. In cabin, out cabin. You have one. Most people have a one in their car that they don't know that's either in their glove box or somewhere else. But to the point, the majority in there in the glove box. But you know, look up your cars. Take care of your cars. You know, then you're gonna be wanting a new car, which you already have the car that you need, and just keep it up. You know, that's the biggest thing. Unless you have a issue of your motor or transmission, you know, most cars are worth saving. You know, one of my friends he ended up showing me a car that had about $12,000 worth of maintenance need to be done on it, and this was a 2013 Nissan Pathfinder. I told the guy I was like 12,000 on a 2013 with 180,000 miles on it. That's a new car, $12,000. Might as well just get a new car. But needless to say, hey, it goes into your need versus want. Do I really need to put all this money in this car and I could just get another car that's running and go through that point? Or just do I want to spend this money on this car? Like I said, you can translate it any way possible. You have to balance it out. What are your needs? What are your wants? And how does it put you in a position financially? How does it put you in a position emotionally? Because most people emotionally, if you take that out of the equation, they know they don't need certain things. I mean, they know they don't want certain things. If you take that out of the equation, there are some things that they really don't want. Um, say with your automatically transfer. Yeah, I talk about that a lot with life insurance, wills, getting in a trust, and I actually need to go ahead and set up everything in my trust. Alonzo been pushing me, but I got a lot of stuff on my plate, but I do have a lot of things set up as far as my life insurance, and that's why I always try to promote as well with people getting life insurance. So you can have suitable life, because a lot of times you will hear men talking about being a provider. Now, if you're the provider in your family, you make the most money, you know, in most cases to where if anything ever happens to your significant other, I mean, if anything ever happens to you, what's going to happen to your significant other? You know, how are they going to focus? How are they going to live knowing that, you didn't properly set up things for them and at your time untimely demise, that pushes them in a bad situation, you know. Um, Prime example, you have men that, have injuries fatally on their job and now they can't work. Their salary basically provided everything for the family. You know, do you have insurance for that? To where if something happens to you, you know, they have the insurance. I can't think of the name of it right now. If Alonzo was in here, he would have threw it in. But a lot of people call it like the Aflac insurance, to where if you're hurt on your job, they'll come in, assess the situation, and start paying you on the premise of the money that you're making at your job. You know, but you have to pay for that insurance. Same thing applies to where if you pass, you know, if anything happens to you, your family's being taken care of. Now, in that case, that is very much needed. That's not a want to say, I maybe get life insurance or something like that. No, it's pretty much needed. Same thing as you having car insurance, having health insurance. Why they don't push it for you to have life insurance? That's a big need because if anything happens, if anything happens, how's your family gonna function? You know, Especially the wife and kids. Even with men, I have insurance on my wife to where if anything happens to her, nowadays you don't know who's gonna, go first. It's always, noted that men have more stress, work harder jobs, do a lot of things. So they're normally typically the one that goes first. But and in situations, you know, women have started having the same. Yeah, sorry about that. I had a call came through. But more or less, women are going through the same struggle as men, so they're having those issues with longevity. So like I said, getting into it, hey, it's weighing your options. But it's getting kind of a little rainy over here. With that being said, shout out to everybody that came through. You know, Focus on getting life insurance. That is pretty much as a need. You know, and I always talk about having all my assets together at one, to where if my wife needs to, you know, she can assess every situation that I have and pretty much make it to where she can handle things, you know, without a shadow of a doubt. All my life insurance are in one place. All of my transactions for business, my passcodes, my credit card, all the information is in a folder that I have, a yellow folder that she knows. All my policies, all my policy numbers, everything is at her disposal right there. And I told her, I said, I'm gonna have to, put in a lock and key because I don't want her knowing all these transactions that I have out right now. But say the least, it's just for safety. If anything happens, I have certain business deals that I can fall back on. You know, you always gotta have security. So with that being said, shout out to everyone. You know,
I'm try to do more, life insurance as well. And I, pretty much might even have Alonzo come in and speak a few spells on that. But with that being said, I always say we here. Shout out to Frugal Mama. We gone.